Hello, welcome to another edition of the Goldwater Report. Since May of 2012, our publication, The Critical Post Chicago, has been tracking a particular story which came to our attention as a result of a program that aired on the popular late-night radio talk show hosted by George Noory called Coast to Coast AM, which is underwritten and produced by Premier Networks. Many folks across the country rely upon this program to get information that goes otherwise unreported by the major media corporate conglomerates. Though George Noory appears to be to many who listen as an affable and friendly character who is enjoyable to listen to, Mr. Noory's network producers and underwriters must be held suspect as to their methodology for vetting the information that Noory presents. It is our opinion that this program should be regarded strictly as entertainment and not a news source of any importance whatsoever, without first independently verifying the information from other vendors of this information that can corroborate the claims made by the guests whom Mr. Noory hosts for interview entertainment. Recently, within the last several months, the Saturday night host of Coast to Coast AM, Mr. John B. Wells, by some accounts, had been forced off the air by Premier Networks because Mr. Wells wanted to interview guests who, in the opinion of Premier Networks and their affiliate carrier syndicators, were guests too controversial in nature and had views which ran counter to the opinions of these syndicators. Mr. Wells now has his own subscriber-based internet broadcasts at his portal called Caravan to Midnight. Mr. Wells, in our estimation, is a man gifted with the best, as they say, pipes in broadcasting, and we have been subscribers to his internet platform because certain guests have populated his productions which we find keenly interesting and credible as sources of good information, each within the fields of their respective disciplines, whether they be financial, political, governmental, or things revolving around the third rail of news reporting, the so-called UFO phenomenon community of researchers. It is our opinion, however, Premier Networks and their production of Coast to Coast AM is not to be held in the same esteem as we have for Mr. John B. Wells, and they should be held accountable, along with others, for their activity in helping to perpetrate a fraud. Back to the subject at hand. It is time for the alternative news community to clean up its act, in our opinion. The reason for that statement is clear to us, and that is because the alternative news community uses the same modus operandi, or mode of operation, as the major corporate conglomerates. Entertainment and bias has crept too far into the methodology for producing the content of these talk shows and various other web portals. A news organization, if it is to be credible and a source of good information, must distinguish the difference between commentary on the part of that news organization and factual news reporting based upon eyewitness sourced corroboration. Too many sites, like Alex Jones's InfoWars, which is one of the most successful, Hagman and Hagman, Jeff Rense, along with a host of others, use information reported by others in the press as a confirmation of their views concerning reality, as opposed to the actual reality that may be separate and distinct from their particular bias. As a result of this kind of reporting, it is our opinion this is more like fear-mongering that is used to propel sales of products to alleviate the anxiety perpetrated by the reported viewpoint than it is a solution to any particular problem at hand or good information. By example, clearly, the Goldwater report is upfront about the fact that it is opinion and commentary by myself aided by a small staff, which is likewise an opinion professed from the production offices of Worldwide TMA, the parent company of the Critical Post Chicago. At the beginning and end of this broadcast, it clearly states that this submission is an opinion broadcast. The reason that this is done is to keep the integrity of our organization intact. We distinguish opinion from actual news reporting broadcasts. The reason that these methods used to report information must be cleaned up by the aforementioned broadcasters is exemplified by the fact that propaganda has been legalized by the government corporation known as the United States of America. This is a fact. It was done by including an amendment to the 2013 National Defense Authorization Act. The title of this amendment to that act is called H.R. 5736, which states the following: to amend the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948 to authorize the domestic dissemination of information and material about the United States intended primarily for foreign audiences and for other purposes. This act may be cited as the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012. The Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 strictly prohibits the use of propaganda upon the citizens of the United States of America within the border proper of American soil, and we cite the text of the Smith-Mundt Act, or the actual title, which is the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948, Section 501 of the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948, Title 22 of United States Code, subsection 1461. It is precisely because of this act by Congress and the fact that it is known by the alternative news community that propaganda operations through the use of various channels of information dissemination has in the past been used covertly upon the American population through information proxies to cause the actions of mobilizing myths to coerce the American population's tacit approval for operations by the United States of America government corporation upon the world stage, which may in fact only benefit a small population of private corporations within the private commercial sector attached to, and in some cases no-bid subcontractors of the national security state primarily concerned with counterintelligence activity, psychological operations, and not the population at large. Which brings us to the subject at hand, cited in the beginning of this broadcast submission. On May 11th of 2012, a man by the name of Mr. David Wilcock had been permitted onto the airwaves of Noory's Coast to Coast AM by Premier Networks. Over a 2-hour period of that discussion, said Mr. Wilcock floated the idea, amongst others, that a groundswell coup to overthrow the sitting de facto American government by operatives deep within upper echelons of the Pentagon was in the process of taking place. That in fact there was a timeline of unknown duration and beginning and end wherein this operation was to occur. Subsequent to that appearance by Mr. Wilcock on Mr. Noory's show, there was a publishing on Mr. Wilcock's website that a lawsuit allegedly vetted by Mr. Wilcock that one Mr. Neil Keenan, as alleged trustee of the Sukarno Gold Trust, of which Mr. Keenan alleges he is the primary trustee of, had been filed somewhere in an unknown jurisdiction, which professed to be a suit to take back into custody large amounts of gold deposited by and on loan to the United States Federal Reserve System, which is also party to the Bank of International Settlements located in Switzerland. That this fact was part of the story, and cited coup proclaimed by Mr. Wilcock on Mr. Noory's broadcast, and this was also part of what the military coup was related to. What has ensued from that point in time to the present is activity perpetrated on the web in various faux information or fake news sources, such as Facebook groups posting questionable pieces of news information in support of their personal bias for the credibility of said information, which arrested the imaginations of a group of folks who put their trust in the information provided by Mr. Wilcock, aided by another individual, one Mr. Benjamin Fulford, as to the veracity of Mr. Keenan's lawsuit, the veracity of a secret mass arrest government coup operations by insiders in the Pentagon, and the character of this man, Mr. Keenan, as being a person he vetted to be a person of high integrity, citing hitherto unknown quote-unquote insider connections deep within the government and other individuals, privy as first-hand witnesses to these dealings, and that this has led to the mass duping of groups of individuals who have nothing to do with their time other than to be voyeurs and hangers-on, which lends weight to something that is otherwise merely a delusion rather than a reality, and of no merit whatsoever. However, as of this date, none of what Mr. Wilcock or Mr. Keenan has alleged would happen has occurred. In fact, it has come to our attention at the Critical Post Chicago that in fact, as a result of this activity, certain folks have contributed vast sums of money to said Mr. Keenan in support of his activities. And now, Mr. Keenan is nowhere to be found and cannot be held to account for the sums he has received, which, we are told, climbs well past the total and in excess of $300,000. This is a substantial enough amount of money for us to take note of, and we report that we have evidence in our possession by way of certain first-hand witnesses which corroborates the claims that this is in fact has occurred. In other words, and the point is, that because of Mr. Wilcock's appearance on George Noory's late-night show, Coast to Coast AM, produced by Premier Networks, Mr. Noory, Mr. Wilcock, Mr. Fulford, and other characters of lesser importance attached to this story have either willingly or unaware been part of what appears to be a massive material and information fraud. This, amongst many other reasons, is why the alternative news community must clean up its act, because consequences unintended occur which materially affect the lives of individuals who trust these places of information purveyance as credible sources of information, when indeed they should do nothing of the sort. And this is also why the encroachment of entertainment upon the news should not be tolerated. It is at this time we here at the Critical Post Chicago, and myself, would welcome Mr. Wilcock, Mr. Fulford, and Mr. Keenan to be interviewed by our organization and to be asked pointed questions and present their side of the story on the air for all who have been watching to see. The facts remain that certain trusting individuals have lost goodly amounts of money supporting Mr. Keenan, with no comment from him directly as to when they can receive their money back, and is the primary concern regarding the opinion of this edition of the Goldwater Report. It is no small matter when folks are duped by quote-unquote alternative news sites when used by individuals attached to stories of questionable credibility, when in fact all that they can be regarded as is adulterated sources of faux news or fake news and shabby entertainment. We do not expect any of these individuals to come forward. They will not be held to account by us. It is our opinion they have neither the courage or integrity to do so. If they do have the integrity which they would otherwise profess on their websites or other video portals of information such as YouTube, and we don't think they do, they can contact us quite easily enough by going to the Critical Post Chicago's homepage and hit the Contact Us email link to respond as to when such interviews can be conducted. Otherwise, what we do expect is that a cadre of individuals ensconced in Facebook fake news groups, who have no business supporting the aforementioned principal characters, to perform a character assassination upon the good name of our publication. They will sling ad hominem attacks and call us Zionists, agents of disinformation. But we understand very well how badly these days anti-Semitism is entrenched in the minds of these folks, and it is in no small part because of the faux or fake information that Mr. Wilcock, Mr. Fulford, Mr. Keenan, and a slew of other paranoid and ignorant folks use to dupe folks that the sky is falling and that it is the Jews who are to blame, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth and the facts as relates to the truth. We respectfully submit, in our opinion, that no material support, either by way of book sales, DVD sales, or web portal subscriptions or donations, should continue to these individuals or organizations until such time that they can corroborate their assertions to a credible news-gathering information service, such as ours. Until they can provide physical proof in a manner that is consistent with their claims, they are and should be regarded as pariahs and prophets of paranoia rather than good souls of good intent. Stay tuned for more on this as we continue to investigate the claims surrounding this unfortunate turn of events. Mr. Wilcock, Mr. Fulford, Mr. Keenan, the ball is on your side of the court. Thank you for watching another edition of the Goldwater Report. That is all.